Coding is an essential step in transforming raw and often messy data into structured insights that reveal the nuanced layers of human experiences and perceptions. In this video, I will explore the basics of data coding. It is important to note that there is no one correct way to code, with different researchers preferring different approaches. As such, this video explores a general strategy that is applicable across methodologies. Before diving into the coding process, certain steps can help you clarify your objectives and streamline your approach. First, make sure to define your research questions. Knowing what you're aiming to understand or explore will guide you towards relevant codes and themes. Second, spend time familiarizing yourself with your data. Read through the data a few times to understand the overall flow and main ideas. This initial reading is crucial for getting a feel for the tone, structure, and range of content in the dataset. Third, decide on your coding approach. Decide whether you will use deductive coding or inductive coding. Deductive coding is where you start with a predefined set of codes, while inductive coding is where the codes emerge from the data as you go along. Note that you can use both deductive and inductive coding, which is usually the strategy I prefer. Finally, organize your work process, whether you're coding manually with highlighters and notes or digitally with software like NVivo. Set up a system that allows you to easily store, retrieve, and organize your codes. Now that you're ready to begin, here is a step-by-step coding approach. First up, initial coding or open coding. Go through your data line by line or paragraph by paragraph and assign descriptive codes to sections that seem relevant to your research questions or topics of interest. These codes should capture the essence of each segment. The open coding stage is often exploratory, and it's normal to have a large number of codes that may seem disconnected. Coding can feel overwhelming at this stage, especially when dealing with large volumes of data. As an example, I'll use the coding I did for a recent paper I wrote. This is what my participants said. As I read this quote, I can see several concepts or ideas mentioned, including collaboration, teamwork, writing groups, book authorship, chapter authorship, emotional response to texts, categorization, and similar experiences. These can be considered inductive codes and are the ones I would assign to these sentences. This also highlights that one sentence can have multiple codes because ideas are often complex and interrelated. As I mentioned earlier, I tend to use both inductive and deductive coding approaches. To do deductive coding of these sentences, I need to use the concepts of my theoretical framework, which in this study was communities of practice. As such, I coded these sentences under the community element of the communities of practice framework. Then start to review and refine your codes. Once the initial coding is done, it's time to refine. Read through your list of codes, combining those that overlap or represent similar concepts, and eliminate codes that appear redundant. This process reduces the number of codes and creates a clearer structure. For example, let's say I had codes for teamwork, working as a team, collaborating, and working together in the overall coding of my dataset. During the refining stage, the 4 codes I mentioned above couldn't be collapsed into one code, let's say working together, because having 4 separate codes for the same idea is redundant. You want to make sure that the codes you have are representative of unique concepts, even though they may be closely related. Next step, axial coding. Axial coding involves grouping related codes into larger categories, sometimes known as thematic clusters. At this stage, your job as the researcher is to start looking for connections between codes. Here, you'll determine the relationships between your codes, creating categories and subcategories that add coherence to the coded data. For example, let's say I had codes for book authorship, chapter authorship, deciding author order, editorial decisions, and tasks in the publication process. These ideas can be grouped together into a cluster, such as complexities of publishing, since they are all closely related. Once you have your categories, the final step is to create your themes. A theme represents the core idea of several of your categories, thereby giving overarching insights that help you answer your research questions. There are different approaches to creating themes, but I tend to use Brown and Clark's reflexive thematic analysis in my own work. Let's look back at that initial quote I had. In the final paper, this quote was under a theme called Same, Same but Different, Everybody Has a Story. This theme is most closely related to that initial code I had called Similar Experiences. However, while the initial code was descriptive of my data, it did not yet fully reflect the nuance and complexity of the meaning of my participants' quotes. I had to use my deep understanding of my participants' words to develop a theme which provided answers to my research question. When I look back at my codes, I noticed that the participants used words like everybody has a story, and that they noted everyone's experiences were all similar to each other and at the same time different from each other. These ideas were frequently repeated, so were clustered together during axial coding. To then create my theme, I used my participants' words, in other words, everybody has a story, and combined it with a catchy phrase, same, same, but different. This helped me to answer my research question, which was related to what participants learned from reading and providing feedback on each other's works. It is also important to note that themes are often interrelated, reflecting the complexity of human experience. It can therefore be useful to create a detailed explanation for your reader of how the themes work together to address your research topic. Finally, coding qualitative data may seem daunting at first, but the process becomes clearer with practice. At its core, coding is about translating real human stories into research findings that can inform, inspire, and change our understanding of complex issues. Through careful, thoughtful coding, you can unlock the full potential of your qualitative data, capturing not just what people say, but the deeper insights hidden within their words. Happy coding!